What is consciousness and how does it arise? My name is Dr. Joe, I'm a doctor of biochemistry, and I'm going to explain to you everything we know about consciousness. It's a question so difficult that even scientists argue over its definition. But we're going to define it here as a state of being aware of oneself and the environment around you. It's the question of how neural activity gives rise to subjective experience, like that warm feeling you get when you meet an old friend, or the pure elation you get when you hear your favorite song. Since then, neuroscientists have proposed dozens of different theories of how consciousness arises, but a few theories have become influential and prominent in the field. And scientists believe the technology is now improving enough to allow us to potentially solve this problem. One example being, we now have a technique called functional magnetic resonance, and this uses a magnetic field to detect small changes in blood flow during brain activity. Another example being MEG, which can measure magnetic fields produced by your brain as a consequence of its electrical activity. Together, these techniques allow us to monitor brain activity of different locations at the same time to the timing of milliseconds. So, earlier this year, scientists put two of the leading theories of how consciousness arises to test using this equipment. They tested two leading theories called integrated information theory and global workspace theory. Integrated information theory says that while different parts of the brain are doing different things, consciousness only arises when these parts of the brain communicate with each other and influence each other. In fact, the theory suggests that the more integrated the different parts of the brain are at communicating with each other, the higher the level of conscious experience. The theory also poses that the posterior, meaning the back of the brain, is the key part for communication to arise consciousness. The other leading theory, the global workspace theory, suggests that information derived in the brain only becomes conscious when it's broadcast to all the other parts of the brain, in particular broadcast to the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain important for decision making. So the leading theories were tested earlier this year using 250 participants and monitoring their brain activity. So what did they find? Well, in the case of integrated information theory, they would expect that different parts of the brain involved in detecting visual inputs would be synchronized. But this wasn't the case. The parts of the brain involved in detecting visual inputs such as shape and color were not synchronized with other parts of the brain involved in detecting visual inputs for patterns. And the global workspace theory didn't hold up much better, making incorrect predictions about the prefrontal cortex. Whilst the prefrontal cortex was activated in certain instances, it wasn't activated when individuals were trying to identify objects or identify the direction of an object. So whilst the prefrontal cortex is important for decision making, this study shows the prefrontal cortex isn't as important for conscious experience. And consciousness experience seems to be linked more to areas of the brain involved in sensory input and detection. So it's back to the drawing board for these scientists, but the results from this experiment are invaluable and pave the way for a future theory of consciousness.